What happens when three reservists mock a middle-aged woman and discover she once served on a Navy SEAL team? You might think she's just a logistics officer, but the scar beneath that wrist bandage tells a different story. A story you won't find in any training manual. Who is Brooke Anderson really? And why does even the lieutenant colonel fall silent when he sees the tattoo on her shoulder? All right, my dear audience, get ready for a story that will leave you astonished. Take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see viewers joining us from all around the world. 5:45 a.m., the first light of the new day still caught behind the thin mist shrouding the forecourt of the AFLTC, the Joint Advanced Tactics Training Center. The automatic glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, and through them stepped a figure that made every other movement in the lobby pause for a beat. Brooke Anderson. Age 42. They call her Brick. Not because she's heavy, but because she does not waver. No makeup, no bright wristbands or logo-emblazoned athletic wear. Just a plain gray hoodie, well-worn military-issue leggings frayed at the knees, and bulky training shoes of the sort infantrymen once used for grueling terrain drills. Everything she wore looked too old, too simple, yet was donned with the precision of a ritual. She shoved the door open with her shoulder and stepped into the main hall. The industrial fans blew across the polished concrete floor. Fluorescent lights above revealed every wrinkle and failed to mask her calm. The receptionista, young private fighting off drowsiness, looked up just in time to see her. Brooke smiled, light as the morning breeze. She swiped her badge, a time-worn silver card with scuffed edges, and the beep rang out crisp and on time. No one knew who she was. She did not introduce herself. She did not need to. Her earth-toned duffel bag hit the floor beside the weight machines with a dry thud, like an exhale from something that has been far from home and returned. Anyone seasoned by years of training would recognize that gait economical, purposeful, no wasted motion. Three young soldiers waited at the entrance to the endurance testing room. Spencer, tall, broad-shouldered, fresh in from a frontline training unit. Derek, an artillery technician working to rebuild his form after a long break. Jordan, a reservist officer who had just completed command school. They were full of energy, eager to prove themselves and just a bit overconfident. Spencer spotted Brooke first. He cocked his head, narrowed his eyes, the appraisal glance reserved for newcomers. "Clocking in again, ma'am?" he asked, voice low but loud enough for the other two to chuckle along. She said nothing. Instead, Brooke unzipped her bag, pulled out two black wrist wraps, and began winding them in the classic way from outside in even loops, snug but not tight. Each motion looked rehearsed 1,000 times. Her hands never trembled. Her breathing stayed steady, her eyes fixed on some point on the floor. Not bracing to prove anything, just doing exactly what she knew. Derek sniffed. Yoga instructor? They always get here early, open up with the dawn, then vanish before anyone breaks a sweat. Jordan shook his head. Maybe she's a retired admin clerk. The paperwork section sends someone by to keep in shape. Brooke heard it all. Still, she remained silent. But her silence made the room's air shift by a fraction. The easy, smug atmosphere began to warp. Nobody noticed exactly when. Perhaps when Brooke adjusted her wraps a second time, eyes downcast, yet spine perfectly straight, as if listening to something unspoken, or when those heavy training shoes met the floor without a sound, an unconscious trait of someone used to surfaces where silence meant survival. Derek glanced at Jordan, then back at Brooke. Gone was the smirk. They were reassessing but could not yet name what they sensed. Brooke moved on. Her pace even, neither rushed nor slow. She didn't seek attention, yet drew every eye like wordless background music initially overlooked, but impossible to ignore once heard. And in those fleeting moments, none of the three young soldiers realized they were in the midst of a lesson known not found in training manuals, not taught in officer curricula, and certainly not measured in push-ups or pull-ups. All they knew was that things were no longer as they first seemed, and Brooke Anderson she needed no change to be the change. Brooke did not respond to Spencer's joke. She didn't need to. Instead, she sat down on the nearest bench, quietly retrieving a roll of black wrist tape from her duffel bag. No logo, no brand, just a length of coarse fabric, its fibers fraying with age. Something anyone who'd spent long deployments would recognize at once. Gear meant not for show, but for survival. She began to wrap right wrist first, each turn firm and even. Her hands did not tremble, her movements were neither rushed nor interrupted. Everything spoke of a routine forged by discipline and experience, no performance, but preparation. When she reached her left wrist, she tilted her shoulder slightly for better access. The sleeve of her light gray hoodie rode up just enough to reveal something no one expected to see on a normal Monday morning at the gym. A tattoo. Not the flashy kind sported at summer barbecues, but a marca symbol. The image of an eagle with outstretched wings, its beak sharp and poised to diver, rendered in charcoal gray, faded by years of sun, salt spray, and windwright above the word SEAL in narrow, bold letters. Not large, not ostentatious, but to anyone who'd ever glanced at a tactical dossier, it signified only one thing: U.S. Navy SEALs. Spencer, standing closest, blinked in near shock, his earlier derision evaporating like dew in sunlight. "That's a Navy tattoo?" he stammered, voice uncertain and almost hushed. The question hung in the air, neither confirmed nor denied. Derek let out a short laugh, as if to dispel the tension. "Probably just some tacky studio job. Every shop's got those template designs these days." But his tone lacked the certainty he'd intended. Because some things can't be faked. The way this ink had faded, not poorly applied, but weathered by time. The choice to place it behind her shoulder, hidden until needed. Jordanthi, quietest of the three, glanced at Brooke again, then turned away without a word. And Brooke? She simply stood, gently. No announcement, no signal, no request. She moved toward the center of the training floor, the personal warm-up area where the earliest and most serious athletes began their day. She started jumping rope. Not the rhythmic showmanship of a fit influencer, but deep, measured jumps, testing her body, calling up muscle memory honed under harsher conditions. The rope spun in a steady blur. Its soft thwack on the floor like a calm breath. Shoulders rolled, neck tilted side to side, hips shifted to test balance, every motion a prelude to something big. Spencer crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, eyes glued to her. He was watching, not to judge now, but to understand. To reconcile what his eyes saw: a middle-aged woman of modest height, simple ponytail with the undeniable signals, the SEAL tattoo, the steady breathing, the unflinching gaze. Something inside him tightened, not embarrassment, but a primal intuition he wished weren't true. She didn't need to prove anything, yet that very absence of proof made everything unpredictable. Derek scratched his chin. Whether real or not, it's just her past, right? But the moment he spoke, he knew he didn't believe it. Because you can leave the service, but you can't shed the way you stand, move, and silently prepare the same way you did in combat. Jordan, speaking for the first time that morning, simply said, "I don't think she's here for yoga." No one replied. Across the floor, Brooke continued her warm-up, shoulders rotating, breathing steady. Everything about her was calm and solid, like bedrock beneath crashing wave surface motion hiding an unshakable core. For a moment, the room's temperature seemed to drop not because of the air conditioning, but because the atmosphere had changed. The smug laughter faded, leaving behind what the military calls contact intuition, the sense that you're facing something unexpected, something you can't fully grasp and should not underestimate. That chill didn't come from outside. It came from within. And the three young soldiers, without speaking, all realized this morning would not be like any other they'd experienced in this gym. Spencer no longer saw Brooke as an ordinary middle-aged woman. All his initial assumptions that she was some yoga instructor turned desk clerk had been stripped away layer by layer in those 10 brief minutes. But instead of retreating or falling silent, he stepped forward. Not out of challenge, but driven by another instinct, a blend of curiosity, pride, and that unease men sometimes can't name. He signaled with a simple motion. "Let's spar, just some drills." A courteous invitation, yet under it lay the desire to reassert his position. Brooke looked at him. One steady Glanceno nod, no smile, no question. But that look calm and deep felt, like a door opening to the unknown. She gave a slight nod. No words. They moved into the empty space at the center of the math area cleared for personal warm-ups where the day's earliest, most serious trainees began their routines. Jordan and Derek instinctively stepped back, creating distance without being told to. Something in Spencer's decision to face Brooke made them unwilling to stand too close. Spencer began a light warm-up, some joint stretches, a few wind punches to loosen his wrists. He relaxed his shoulders and nodded at Brookie as if to reassure her. "Just play." She didn't react. Then he threw a light jab. Not a real attack, just a probe. The kind soldiers use to test an opponent's reflexes. His right arm flicked out crisp and clean, wrist firm, hips turning just enough to generate power. He'd been praised for his speed. This strike was textbook, no flaws. Brooke did not flinch, did not pull away. She stepped back precisely half a foot. No guard, no raised arm. She relaxed her hands as if there were nothing to defend against. And then, just as Spencer prepared to follow up, she moved. A swift leg hook, smooth, silent, unannounced. Her lower leg swept across his ankle, insufficient to injure, but precise to the millimeter. His balance collapsed instantly. No time to shift his hips. No chance to brace with his hands. His body fell to the mat like a scene played in fast forward. The mat made a soft thud, not loud, but unmistakable. A drop heard by everyone in the room. Spencer lay there, eyes wide, as though waking from a short dream where everything he thought he knew about strength and control had been rewritten by a single touch. Brooke did not step forward, did not bend to ask if he was all right. She simply stood there, arms at her sides, breathing steady, gaze fixed on him. No mockery, no condescension. But in that silence lay a clear message. "I don't need to raise my voice to speak to you." Spencer propped himself up on one hand. No one laughed. No childish ooze. The atmosphere felt like a classroom where a lesson had just been taught in a language they didn't know. Jordan exhaled softly for the first time that morning. Derek pressed his lips together, eyes still on Brooke, as if studying why every move she made seemed entirely justified. No bravado, no display, but absolute certainty. And silence. Spencer rose to his feet. His shoulders were tense but not rigid. Gone was the cocky smirk. He inhaled slowly, then said quietly, no joke in his tone, "That wasn't luck." Brooke did not reply. She did not need to. His words, spoken as acknowledgement, were the conclusion she wanted them to reach themselves. Because of a strange truth known to everyone who's faced real combat. When others are forced to acknowledge you without your having to speak, that's when you're truly heard. Across the floor, another group of soldiers began to take notice. Low voices, whispered conversations. They didn't know what had happened, but they couldn't ignore the sight of Spencer, the strongest guy in the room, sitting on the mat while that woman remained standing, entirely in control. Brooke turned back to the mat and started her next warm-up hip, leg, and back stretches. Every movement precise, as if every joint in her body remembered exactly where it belonged. Not a warm-up for fun, but the preparations of a soldier about to engage in serious work. Derek whispered, "She's not just ready, she's here to teach." Jordan swallowed and remained silent. But his look said it all. For the first time, they understood that some lessons don't come from the drill sergeant, but from the comrades you once underestimated. And this morning, the lesson had only just begun. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water, then stay tuned. The story still holds surprises. Comment 1 if you're enjoying it so we know you're still with us. Brooke stopped, not because she was tired, but because she had done enough to let those before her understand that her silence was not weakness but a boundary others should be careful not to cross. She said nothing. Just one look, gentle yet resolute, directed at Jordan. That gaze did not accuse or reprimand, but served as a silent reminder. Respect what you do not yet understand. Jordan nodded so lightly it seemed a firmer nod might shatter him. Spencer pressed his hands together, knuckles whitening from the strength of his grip. And Derek, for the first time, stared down at his boots. No one still felt as if they were in a routine morning workout. This was no longer a place to flaunt physiques or share easy laughs. Something heavier, something real, had filled the space and they had no name for it. The door opened. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Halethi, officer in charge of the Special Training Unit at AFLTC, stepped in. He appeared smaller than many expected, yet his gaze was unforgettable to anyone who'd ever met it. The eyes of a man who'd given orders in places where GPS could not reach. The eyes of a man who chose between right and death. He said nothing, neither greeting nor question. He simply stood, observing. The way he looked as if reading a familiar map, searching for what had changed, held the room still. Until his gaze settled on Brooke's left shoulder, where her hoodie sleeve had ridden up. There, a tattoo neither large nor ornate, just a monochrome eagle carved in charcoal lines, beak tilted, wings half spread, and the single word beneath, SEAL. He stepped forward, each step deliberate, with no hesitation. No one dared interrupt that moment. His approach was ceremonial, a man who'd lived in that world, walking toward a past he thought buried. Brooke Anderson. He spoke, not loudly, yet the words echoed. I understand you served with SEAL Team 6. No one breathed. She did not speak. She only nodded on neither confirmation nor denial, but a gesture as familiar as a salute among comrades. Unadorned, unforced, Colonel Hale's gaze lingered on her shoulder. Then he turned to the three young soldiers, his voice dropping yet growing heavier, like the thud of timber on concrete at midnight. Do any of you know what this means? No one answered. Jordan clenched his fists behind his back. Spencer did not raise his eyes. Derek bit the inside of his cheek. He took another step, pointing without touching to the tattoo and the surrounding skin. This, he said, is not decorative ink, not the kind you pick from a shop to tell stories you've never lived. This is evidence. He lowered his hand, his eyes sharpening. Look around that cymbaldo you see. The faint lines, the tiny scars, horizontal and vertical, not accidents, not scratches. They are what remain when fire touches your skin, when steel bites your bone, when time does not allow proper healing. She does not tell, but her body has told. He paused. The air felt as heavy as heated steel. Then he asked, nearly whispering, "Do you know what separates a person who can tell a story from a person who must remain silent?" The three did not move. "Scars," he answered for them. "A storyteller may speak, and sometimes merely be heard, but one with scars has been there and still stands." He turned back to Brooke, his tone softening. Team 6 does not let anyone leave unmarked. Those marks are not trophies. They are not for display. They are living proof that their bearer did what had to be done, in places no one else would go. Brooke remained silent, neither affirmation nor denial. But in her stance, in her unblinking gaze, in every steady breath, was a declaration stronger than any spoken word. Colonel Hale regarded her for a few more seconds, then faced the three young soldiers again. "Next time you laugh at someone because they don't fit your image, remember, some carry the truth so deeply they need not tell a word. Just stand and the world will realign itself." He waited for no response, needed none. He turned and left the mat. In that moment, what remained was a silence deep enough to swallow every prejudice, every question, every thought the three soldiers had held that morning. The scars no longer bled, but they still commanded by their very presence. The gym fell into a silence, so complete it felt as if the air itself had been sucked away. Every sound seemed peeled from reality, leaving only the ragged, uncertain breathing of the three young soldiers. A soft whoosh from the ventilation system whispered through the ceiling like a belated murmur of truth. You could hear even your own heartbeat, if you dared to listen. Spencer remained standing, but no longer steady. His pride, once a solid shell, was melting away. Jordantha, one who once strutted without glancing at Enyana now, rubbed his forehead, eyes drifting between floor and wall. Derek clenched both fists so hard his knuckles turned white, as if trying to hold on to something slipping from his grasp. Brooke still stood motionless, no shift in stance, no adjusting her clothes, no seeking praise. She simply existed like a stone tower amid the storm of dawning awareness in the minds of those who thought they knew what strength meant. Lieutenant Colonel Hale walked slowly to the right, his gaze never leaving the three young faces. He offered no reprimand. He did not need to. The silence in the room had done that for him. "There are things," he spoke low and sharp, "you will never find in any manual. No simulation, no video. No one can point them out on a map, and certainly no test can prepare you for them." He paused, his eyes resting on Brooke, recognition shining in a look only someone who'd walked through darkness could give another. She had gone there, returned, and still stood firm. She has lived, in places where maps are mere paper, and right or wrong is decided not by reason, but by instinct. Places with no second chances, where a single slowed breath can silence an entire team forever. He turned back to Spencer. "Do you remember calling her ma'am?" Spencer did not answer, could not. "She is not ma'am because of age, but because of the weight she bears, weight none of you three have ever shouldered, or even imagined you might, and perhaps never will." Silence, not a shoe squeak, no warm-up chatter from the other side of the room. All eyes were fixed on the four, forming an unspoken circle, too respectful to interrupt. Jordan nodded ever so slightly, not exactly an apology, nor a full admission, but the first acceptance that something lay beyond his control. Derek whispered to himself, "I don't know. I can't." But Hale did not wait for them to finish. "Right, you don't know, that is the problem." He stepped half a pace forward. "And the thing is, You don't have to know everything, but you must learn to stay silent when you don't understand, and to show respect when you have no right to judge." He stopped, voice even lower. "For there are those who remained silent so you could grow up in peace. Those who acted while others analyzed. And those who brought back lives but never returned their sleep." No one spoke. Brooke bowed her head. Not deeply, not as a ritual, but enough to send a signal. "I am not angry. I only wish you to understand. A silent forgiveness not born of generosity, but of understanding that most young people have never had the chance to face this truth." She raised a hand and lightly touched her wrist wrapper, small gesture heavy with symbolism, as if adjusting not protection for skin, but armor for memory. A reminder to herself, and to them, hold respect when you lack the standing to question. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. No one broke that moment, for everyone felt the lesson had taken root and would not be easily uprooted. Not a lesson on the whiteboard, but one steeped in old sweat, fire scars, and unspoken words. Lieutenant Colonel Hale stepped back half a pace, as if ceding the mat to the reality just established. He did not need to close the lesson with a final pronouncement. The lesson had sealed itself in silence. The three young soldiers stood there silent. They did not fully understand. But now, they knew they did not understand. And sometimes, that is the most necessary beginning. The jump rope's final rotation slowed. The steady spin faltered, as if signaling that it was time to draw a close. Brooke exhaled softly, bent to retrieve the rope not to continue, but to conclude. The sound of the rope snapping against the mat was quiet, yet resonant. At the same moment, the soft whisper of her wrist wrap being removed skimmed across her weathered skin, a sound no one could describe, yet everyone recognized. A sound of release, of remembrance, and of an ending. Lieutenant Colonel Hale stepped forward without waiting for anyone to give way. He stood before Brooke and nodded slowly. Not a rigid military salute. Not a word of praise. Simply a gesture that one who has emerged from darkness offers to another who has walked the same path. He extended his hand. Brooke looked up and took it, two hands on that once gave orders, one that once executed them at the equal intersection of mutual recognition. His grip was firm, hers was slender and marked by countless trials. Yet in that touch, hierarchy dissolved, leaving only the bond of those who understand that life is not born of commands, but of individual choices made in moments of life and death. No slogan, no moralizing lecture. Only that image, a scarred hand reaching for a hand that had enabled growth, and everyone watching knew that this morning, something greater than raw physical strength had been passed on. Brooke folded the rope and tucked it back into her bag, fastening the zipper with care. She did not hurry, nor did she slow down to attract attention. Every step she took precise, as though planned, was silent yet assured. As she passed Spencer, Derek, and Jordan, none moved. They stood in an unspoken line, eyes following her without strain. It was no longer fear, not just respect, but something deeper, forgiveness toward themselves. Forgiveness for the days they judged by appearances. Forgiveness for the moments of pride when they thought strength lay in muscle and shouted orders. And forgiveness for the innocence of youth, which had never risked life itself for anything beyond a training schedule. Brooke reached the door. She paused and turned. No one expected her to speak, yet she did. One word, soft, complete. "Thank you." No fanfare, no drums, but that sound from a woman who had endured in silence, now offering thanks to the three young soldiers who had misjudged her, carried a weight that stilled the room. They did not respond with words, but Spencer nodded very faintly. Derek gripped his cap's brim, eyes brimming, yet tearless. Jordan placed a hand over his heart, the place where a powerful awakening had just taken root, to a sound no drill field could replicate. When the door closed behind Brooke, something in each person left behind had changed permanently. And you who have watched this Fardo, you feel it too? Because stories like Brooke's do not appear on television, they do not speak from podiums. They do not recount their deeds, for there is no need to speak what lives in their gaze, in their scars, in the way they walk through an ordinary world, neither seeking remembrance, nor ever forgotten. If this story has stilled your breath for a moment, leave a comment below, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share this video with friends and family in the United States, especially those who have served or are serving. Because stories like this are more than tales, they are reminders that heroes still live among us quietly, and they deserve to be seen. See you in the next video. Thank you for listening.